What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic. And today, I'm capping off all of the Child's Play stuff that I did in spooky season with the addition of Doc of Chucky, which is available on Shudder / AMC Plus. And it doesn't have audio description. Unfortunately, my budget doesn't allow me to hire like an actual like trumpet player to do that for me. But so I have to do it by myself. Like and subscribe, and maybe one day I can have my own trumpet player to do that when something doesn't have audio description. That would be amazing. Okay, so here's the deal about Doc of Chucky. I was just sitting down. Sometimes I can watch more than one movie in a day. Sitting down to watch Doc of Chucky. I didn't know anything about it. I was just like, okay, it's a documentary with Chucky. Cool. We're gonna talk about Child's Play, and it'll just be like every other documentary ever. And so I just started playing it. It's 4 hours and 55 minutes long. What in the holy fuck? What? This is something where you're like, yeah, this did not get a theatrical release. Good luck with that. I was sitting there thinking to myself, I was like, The Brutalist is 3.5 hours and has a built-in intermission. This is 4 hours and 55 minutes. It's almost like they know the audience is not going to watch it in one sitting, that they're going to like pause it at will. You know what I'm saying? Like this thing is like built for streaming where you can just come back to it later on. Almost like if a limited series wasn't episodes, but was just really long. Like you went in and you were like, oh, I'm going to watch, oh God, HBO's got this new thing. How long? Oh my God, it's 10 hours. And they're like, you know what? Just stop it when you feel like it. And you're like, okay, I guess I could do that. But I kind of like those breaks. You know, I kind of like to know when. And here I kind of look back on it and I go, okay, so there are clear breaks now that I know what it is that you're trying to do. But I was like deep into the film and I was like, my fucking God, this movie is long. Is it going to stop? Like, at what point are we cutting off? So it kind of describes each film by itself and progresses through time. So it starts off like at the beginning of Child's Play where we learn and, you know, that originally the film was going to be titled Batteries Not Included until there was a film called Batteries Not Included. And then they had to come up with a new thing. And it talks about the casting of Andy and everything feels like sort of organically the beginning of the franchise, which is kind of what I thought this film would just be, like how Chucky came to be. When we started breaking into the sequels, that was when I was like, oh, okay. Well, maybe it's just the original trilogy. And then we got to Bride of Chucky, and I was like, I'm gonna IMDb this and check the runtime. Because I was like, if we're gonna do Bride, that means we're gonna do Seed. And if we do Seed, oh God, then they might do Cult and Curse. And what if they do the TV series? I was just sitting there going, like, in my mind, I'm like, oh no, how long is this movie? And I wasn't even expecting. I was expecting maybe there to be like less information about like the more recent things. No, that's about an equal amount of information, which is how it accumulates a 4 hour, 55 minute runtime. Basically 5 hours. So it also doesn't have audio description, so any of the cool shit that they're doing with, you know, puppet work or animatronics or anything like that, it just doesn't, none of that really sits well. You do get to hear some cool explanations as to why they chose things or why they wanted to do something in the first place. Originally, they were looking at casting a female voice for Chucky because The Exorcist, the voice of Satan, was a female voice. Well, the voice of Satan was also a female voice because it was coming from Linda Blair. So that could have something to do with it. I will admit that The Exorcist probably would have taken on a completely different tone if Linda Blair, as a child actress, had spoken in her own voice as Regan, and then James Earl Jones popped out at her. Like, I am. Uh, so, yeah, there's interesting stuff here. It just depends on how much you want to watch that much. I think what's going to happen is, now that I've given you the warning, if this is something you want to watch, I don't think I think you're probably going to break it up. So you can break it up when they transition from film to film, because they just go through the franchise. So however many films you want to sit through the explanation in one day or in one sitting, go through that, pause it. It'll stay in your your queue on your streaming platform. It's not going to disappear. And then you can come back to it later on and resume from that spot and break it into like 2 long movies. It can be 2.5 hour movies and done, because essentially that's what I watched, which kind of is what I normally would have watched. I just kind of wasted one day all on Chucky, and my mind melted. And Chucky won. That's the final death from Chucky, is mind meld from watching Doc of Chucky for 5 hours. I was not ready for 5 hours. I don't think anybody is ever really ready for a 5 hour movie if they're not told in advance it's a 5 hour movie. So, at this point, so many things get broken up into docu-series that you're just like, oh, if it was that long, it would be like 3 episodes or however many, And to be totally honest, there's no reason this couldn't work broken down into actual, like, here's Child's Play 2, Child's Play 3, Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky, like going down the line and actually like breaking it down into each episode, instead of an endless barrage of a film that seems to never end. And you just keep wondering, are we just covering the theatrical Chuckies? Oh no, we're gonna go direct-to-video Chuckies now. Anyway, so it's comprehensive. It's meant for hardcore Chucky fans, and there's a place for that. I'm not gonna totally. I can make fun of it, but I'm not gonna slide it for what it is. I will say though that I feel like this comes from a place of love, and too many people are just like, everything's amazing, and I loved everything about it, and I was so stoked and so happy to be there. It's kind of weird, but I loved it. Like, everybody's just really upbeat about being in this thing. There really isn't, like, there really wasn't like a huge moment where somebody was like, I was traumatized for the rest of my life after being in this film. There was one thing where the guy was talking about how he liked this girl on production set, and he just like grabbed her and kissed her one time, and I was like, man, the 80s were just like a different time, like the 80s. And she was like totally into it. She was like, yeah, cool, now we're married. And I was like, what? I think that's how the story wound up. I was like, oh my god, all right. Like bubbling tensions, like, oh, great, cool. Now we have to ask consent. That's the appropriate way to do things. We don't just grab people and like we're in a rom-com. I also, probably the best little tidbit of anything that I got out of this film was the actress that plays in the first film. She wasn't just a nanny, like a babysitter. She was something. Like, she was connected somehow. I think she was like the sister or something, the aunt or whatever, who Chucky kills, and then they start looking at Andy, and she falls out the window, basically. That lady admits that she's only seen the film, like, she hasn't seen the film past her death, which I think is incredibly funny to me. Like, I imagine her like being at the film's premiere and just getting up and walking out at the time that she died, and everybody in the audience just like turning and looking at her and being like, what the fuck? What's up with this? What's she doing? Isn't she in this? Didn't she just die? Is she mad that she died? Did she not know that she died? Like, what's the query here? She's like, it was just really hard to watch. I'm like, yeah, but you read the script, right? It wasn't like a surprise death. You filmed a death sequence. You don't have to say yes to the film. You can say no. It's like, you know you're in a horror movie. I don't know what this thing is with actors when they like come back around to things and I'm like, it was just, I didn't, you know. You can say no to a film or just not audition for it at all. You can tell you can be like, I'm not into horror movies. I don't want to be in a horror movie. And see where your career goes from there, you know? I don't know, but it just feels very weird to me because it's something that's bothered me a lot about other actors. It just very sort of feels selfish because there's so much work that goes on from the rest of the crew. I gave Michelle Williams a ton of shit for her dumbass comment while she was campaigning for the Fablemans. I would still do it today. I'd be like, do you realize you said that? Like, it feels so absurd. Like she said when they were asking about whether or not she was going to campaign in supporting or lead, her comment back was, I haven't seen the film, but I feel like the film I shot, I was the lead. And then she also followed that up with that mothers are leads statement, which I thought was also bizarre considering like how like the lack of understanding around what a protagonist is. But the fact that she hadn't bothered to see the movie yet, just I don't know. I just when you've got like Steven Spielberg behind the camera and you've got John Williams writing a score, aren't you at least curious with what those two masters are doing with the scenes that you acted in? Or are you so like put off by the idea of seeing yourself on screen you can't get in there? And that's why like when this chick is like, I haven't seen anything past my death, I'm like, this film's been out since 1988. Are you fucking kidding me? Like seriously? And first of all, I could understand more if she was like, I've never watched my death sequence. Like that would make more sense to me than her being like, she's like, I close my eyes every time. I just don't want to watch myself die. Like that would make sense. I'm down for that. Like that I can reason with. But the fact that like she watches her death sequence and then I guess leaves or or turns off the movie or I don't know, closes her eyes and sticks her fingers in the air, la 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 la. That's a lot of the movie for you to do that for. So, and movies have premieres. So she was likely invited to the premiere and likely walked out of the movie, is what she's saying, basically, at that point. So, very weird. Actors are weird, guys. That's what this is coming down to. Doc of Chucky, should you watch it? No, it doesn't have audio description. And it's 5 hours long. But if you're a fan of Chucky and you want to get into it, yeah, absolutely watch it. But I definitely would have approached this in a different way than this. And it does kind of feel like everybody was having happy, fun times. And I don't think it's always the most honest thing when people come together and everybody feels like, everything was perfect. Nothing was wrong. We loved everything. That guy grabbed me, kissed me, and then I married him. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was just standing there and this guy came up to me and kissed me. I was like, oh my God, this is so romantic. I mean, things like that are just like, is this real life? Is this just fantasy? Like, what are we doing here? So, shout out to Queen. So, yeah, do what you want with this. Your life is not going to be changed either way. But if you are big into Chucky and you want to hear Brad Dourif talk about like his thoughts on the role and how he came into it, there's a lot of interesting stuff. Most of it is at the beginning of this, because if we're being honest, most of it is how they came to create Chucky and why they came to create and what the thoughts were behind it. So most of this is front loaded. As you start progressing from film to film, then it just gets like, okay, well, you're now you're making sequel choices, Um, and it's funny how they were doing test screenings and people were laughing at the film. And they're like, oh God, people are laughing at our film. And it's like, it's a killer doll, man. Um, so yeah, uh, there were parts that I enjoyed, not all of it. But unfortunately, because it doesn't have audio description, I'm going to slap it with the grade of unwatchable. Yay! I'd really love for AMC Plus Shudder to start making some serious contributions to the audio description community. They have plenty of films that they have released theatrically with audio description. They have TV shows that have audio description, but they don't have them on their own service. And then they also have plenty of library content that cycles in all the time that have known audio description tracks. This service could be popping for blind people, and it's not, due to like a choice. So I choose to give it a grade of unwatchable. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I'll see you guys on the other side.